Quiet in the courtroom. This court is now in session.
I used to go to trials. Serial Mom ended that for me. Whenever I make a movie about one of my obsession, it's over. I don't do it anymore. And I don't go to trials anymore because they recognize me now, too. And I'm afraid if they don't like me, they give the defendant 10 more years. I don't want to be responsible for that. And then the press thinks, oh, well, you're here to make a movie about it, which I'm not. I can't be a voyeur anymore. That's the only bad thing about any kind of celebrity.
Order in the courtroom.
When I met John, I was 17 years old, and he was totally fascinated with he came downtown, and he was totally fascinated with the level of crime and criminals, drag queens and, drug addicts and everything. He was just fascinated, and I don't know why, probably because he came from such a straight background, and he wasn't straight. He was interested in the craziest films. I mean, Russ Meyer, come on. And he was influenced by him, and I think the crime element is something that is part of his childhood fantasy.
Well, I think it's mainly John's interest. Mainly it's all John. I don't really care about serial killers. I enjoy his fascination with it because he always has a twist on it that makes it more interesting and makes it funny. But it's not something that I have myself, particularly.
I think the obsession came from John and Divine as teenagers, wanting to be famous. They both wanted to be celebrities. And they were going to try any way they could, and you couldn't just jump up there and be on the top, so you might as well be the lowest bottom with a kick. And so I think that's really why they started all the shocking stuff, and because they knew that they would get noticed.
I met John when I was at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He was borrowing our equipment to edit Pink Flamingos. I hadn't seen Pink Flamingos. I had heard about it. And I became the assistant cameraman and the lighting person on Female Trouble. That was the first time I was ever exposed to this kind of humor. And then I go on the set, and the first set, Divine is welding as a man. He's doing some welding thing. And then the second day, Divine as a man is raping Divine as a woman. And in the parking, in a abandoned road near the Baltimore Zoo. And it was cold, and we had a double that swapped gender. It was very hilarious. And ever since, I've been who I am. I could have gone a whole nother way, but meeting John has taken me on this other path.
John is my friend as well as the directors, and and Vincent is my friend, and the set designer. These are all people that I consider old friends, and members of my family. John's very family oriented. He likes to keep people. He doesn't like to let people go. He would rather add people to his life than lose people from his life, which I think is a wonderful quality of his. So I think it matters to him very specifically that he incorporate people that have been with him for a long time. I mean, I've known John now for over 40 years. And that's a long time.
I first met John, we were both at the Cannes Film Festival, and he came up and he said, I went to your trial. And I thought that was maybe the strangest introduction I'd ever heard from anybody. And I knew who he was right away because I'd seen pictures of John, and I was familiar with the Pink Flamingos. Although I hadn't seen it, I knew all about it. And he said, I want you to be in one of my films. And I thought, oh, yeah, sure, thank you. And a year later, he called me, and next thing I knew, I was in Baltimore and filming Crybaby.
Hairspray was 1987. Crybaby was 1989. And Serial Mom was 1993. And I remember I had like a week to pack. Because not only did I get that movie, but I also got my talk show. So my talk show was happening directly after the movie. So I picked up and moved out of LA on April 1st. I'll never forget, it was April Fool's Day, 1993. And I moved everything. I shipped everything to storage in New York, and I went directly to Baltimore to start the film. I was there for 3 months making the film. And on the weekends, when I had days off, I would go up to New York to look for an apartment, because I had to move to New York to start my show.
You know, it was my first movie. It was my first experience. So, you know, you always remember your first. And so I have incredibly vivid memories about this one particular movie. Since then, I don't remember anything, but this one movie, I have these great memories.
You know, I'll tell that story about meeting John, and people will kind of go, God, that's just so incredible, like you were discovered. And I said, well, yeah, but I recommend waiting tables over getting kidnapped by terrorists and being put in a federal penitentiary in order to meet a film director. It's not really the method I would have chosen. So just don't get so excited about it.
When I pitched this movie, I'm trying to think, I pitched it to the real Hollywood way, just like The Player, you know, and I can't remember how many places, but this was a new company, Savoy, the one that said yes to it. And with Kathleen Turner involved, which immediately got the film greenlit.
Movie making is movie making. It all depends on how big the pie is. You see, now we were used to working with like a no pie, basically. And this was basically you had some money. So where you wanted to put the money was in the production, on the screen, with the quality of that.
Hairspray was probably the best budget we'd had to date. Crybaby seemed a little less, so it was a little harder. And with Crybaby, of course, we were stuck with, 8 weeks in a row of rain when we're doing an outside, beach club. So there are a lot of problems with that. Serial Mom, really, I just remember it going flawlessly.
It was just amazing that we all had to kind of become straight in this. You can see by Vincent had to production design of a straight suburban house. Although if you look carefully, you'll see little weird things. And Van Smith certainly was in the Talbots look, or some kind of J. Crew look that was not his forte either. But we went along with that, and as it developed, when the people between our stable, which at this point Ricky Lake was in, and this new blood, aka money, we expanded our cast and the quality of our casting.
After Crybaby, I knew perfectly well I was not going to do the stunt casting thing again, which I think I helped invented that term, because in Crybaby it was ludicrous. We had like Joey Heatherton and we had David Nelson, and it was like that on purpose. Like it's a mad, mad, mad world, basically, only my version. So this way I thought, well, the only way I can surprise people is to get actors that people would never think would be in a John Waters movie, that had absolutely no camp value at all, which certainly Sam Waterston was not known as a camp icon.
Once you had Kathleen Turner in place and attached to this project, it was pretty easy. Everybody thought you really were legit. You know what I mean? That Kathleen Turner would do that. And she read it. It's not a case of where she or Sam or anybody else didn't know what the material was. They read it and said, okay, we'll do it. And they came and joined our little bunch of merry pranksters.
I was terrified of Kathleen Turner. Before I met her, I was terrified of her. And I just thought, oh my God, she is the biggest star I've ever worked with. What is she going to be like?
She was a little intimidating. She's a tough cookie. But she's so great in the film.
She came on set the first day, and she knew everyone's name. She'd gotten the call sheet and memorized everyone's name off the call sheet. And I was like, I was like tugging at her coattails, and she's walking around, and I was like, how do you know everyone's name already? She's like, oh, sweetheart. It's the first thing you do.
She had a fabulous sense of humor, and I kind of clicked with her, and I was so shocked at how small she really is, because she's so large on the screen, and then to meet her, she's a teeny. She's smaller than me. And I just found that to be amazing, because, wow, that's what a star wants, is to be big on the screen.
We'll be right back after this, so please
Turn it off. Violence is everywhere these days. Oh, it's just Beverly. Come in, Beverly.
Oh, she scared me. She was actually a true delight to work with. I mean, I really enjoyed her a lot. She was so much fun. She had a really good time on Serial Mom. She was really having she was having so much fun that it was impossible for people around her not to enjoy her.
Hello?
Is this the cocksucker residence?
God damn you, stop calling here.
Isn't this 4215 Pussy Way?
You bitch!
Now let me check the zip code. 212, fuck you!
I do have a vague memory of my children laughing and pointing at the television set when I was having that sex scene with Kathleen, which I think is one of my finest hours, really.
Oh, get it! Ready! I'm ready! No! No!
For Serial Mom, we picked all the dishes with sunflowers, and there were sunflowers everywhere, and everything was bright and cheery, and just the opposite of her inner character, her outer character that she displayed to the world. And we did all the dining room had all Audubon prints, and I purposely picked out all the cute little birds and not the vultures or the predators.
Of course, Van Smith did the costumes, and he had been on since we decided there were costumes that didn't come out of thrift shops in our career. He also did the famous dress, of course, and Pink Flamingos and all the great stuff that he always did. This was kind of challenging to him because it was to be sat on.
It was for Van, a challenge Van Smith, who did all the costumes for my movies and the makeup up to a certain point. But I think he did a great job. It was like Towson. It was where I came from. It was where we all ran from. Van always got the character exactly right by just what he had him on. It might be simple. And in this case, it was not as splashy. It was not the one that's drag queens are going to be dressing as. However, it was exactly appropriate for the script, and I think he did a beautiful job in it. He underplayed it, which is the way to play Serial Mom. She was a good mom that got away with it. And part of her outfits are why she got away with it in front of a jury.
Your Honor, I would like to make a motion. I wish to fire my attorney and defend myself.
The genius of all that is that they had to match up with the production designer, and Van and Vince knew what each other thought. So, I mean, basically color schemes. I don't even think they ever mentioned it. They just would get there and they would be that. But you also had to take, I mean, there's the one shot with Kathleen running down a Baltimore street that the film was not made to speed up. She was hauling down that street with a big fat butcher knife in her hand we had it locked up a little bit, but still, she had to be able to run in the shoes, move in the dress. His crowning moment, of course, was camel lips. You have to have a sharp eye, but it is hysterical. I remember I just laughed till I cried, and so did John, actually.
And they were flesh-colored, so they were just really funny. Tight, flesh-colored pants. It was foam padding, and it was very uncomfortable to wear after a while. It started to get kind of steamy in there. If you know what I'm saying, ladies.
Well, L7 was, I remember it just being a punk rock group. I really liked it. We're girls too, which was rare in punk rock to have a female punk rock group. And I just liked them. I don't remember. They were out at the time. I liked their music. I probably had seen them live somewhere. I don't remember if it was in Baltimore or in New York or the Mud Club. I don't remember where. But I just liked them, and, I had the Dead Boys in my movie. I always had singers. I had Iggy Pop, I had Debbie Harry. I always had pop music people in my movies. They can always act.
John provided the title. He said he wanted a song written called Gas Chamber. And so I then wrote the lyrics to Gas Chamber from the fact that he wanted a song called Gas Chamber. And so I kind of wrote it in the character of Camel Lips, because I don't know if L7 would have written a song called Gas Chamber. Something, Hang Me High, Lethal Injection, Watch Me Fry, Gas Chamber. And then there's something about orange blossom scented cyanide, because I had read that cyanide smells like orange blossoms, and I just thought that was so wild, so I put that in there too. That was the first time we ever had like an assignment to write a song, you know, for a movie.
Is my mom in there?
Dad, now look cool as Hammerjack.
There was like a stage diving going on and all that stuff. And Sam was unfamiliar with this behavior at a rock concert, which was happening all the time, but he was just like, what, you're gonna carry me? What? And he was really like, I don't know, maybe there should be a stunt person, or, you know, and the crowd reassured him that he'd be okay. And then they lifted him up and carried him around the club, and it was fine. So he was a trooper, because I don't think I would have done that. I would not have trusted those little monsters.
In some respects, this was typecasting because I didn't even know what a mosh pit was. So the whole thing was a voyage of discovery.
I've always had a great friendship with the world of punk rock. They've always been good to me. I get along the best. I feel the most at home around punk rock kids. And I figured that they would get it and that they would do it and they'd be funny and scary. Funny and scary is always so appealing to me.
We'll take a 10-minute recess. Attorneys, be ready with your closing arguments.
Kathleen Turner asked, can I bring a friend to the set? I usually always say no to that because we're working, same way I don't go to that person's job. But she said it's Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and I thought, well, fine, but doesn't she have advanced men that have read about me and wouldn't allow that? I just couldn't believe that she must not have very good people working for her if they allowed this. So she came and she stayed all day, and it was amazing to me. We had to feed them too, which was union problems.
I guess it was a scene with Patty Hearst. It was like a courtroom scene, I think. I remember the day. I can't tell you specifically, but I remember not really knowing who that was.
I wasn't filming that day, or at least I don't remember that I was filming that day. But she was there for the group photograph.
And I don't know that she'd ever been on a movie set. The only thing I do remember when I said, oh, and do you know Patricia Hearst? And she said, the Patricia? I mean, she acted like she just meant the Beatles.
Well, you know, Patty Hearst will turn ahead. I mean, it was so incredible, and it was something that we were obsessed with. I mean, several things that have happened, the huge news stories such as the Manson case and that case, certain things that you just couldn't get enough of it, and it was not as much electronics as readily available as it is today, you know. So to see Patty Hearst, who is, as I told you, I mean, terrific person. But you know what? Even Sandra Day O'Connor gets a little starstruck, I guess, when she turned around and saw Patty Hearst. You know?
No, everyone was glad she was there, and people were nice to her. And we didn't exploit it either. We didn't have the publicist that day call the New York Post, which we so could have. Guess who's here today? I don't think it was ever in the paper. We kept it under the wire, and I've never seen her since. Hopefully we made her a little more liberal.
Oh my. That is the limit.
When John was talking about Serial Mom, he asked me if he could borrow this Christmas card that I had gotten. He said he wanted to slip it in the movie, and it's the scene where Sam Waterston goes under the bed and finds all of his wife's love letters to other mass murderers. But in this was this little Christmas card, and it really is a hand-painted Christmas card from John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer, to me on Christmas. And John just stuck it in because he knew no one would really know what it was except for John and I would know. But I think at the end of the shoot, he told Sam Waterston, you know, that card was really from a mass murderer. I think he was appalled, but it's really funny.
You have to be pretty determined to be really offended. Because there's a lot of, it's shocking, and it definitely asks you to be broad-minded, and but it's done so much in the spirit of fun, and there's something centrally kind.
I mean, I actually knew a serial killer. Yeah, I knew one, and I knew him while he was killing. I just didn't know it at the time. His name was Tony Costa, and he lived in Provincetown, and he was killing one winter that I was there. He was taking tourist girls. It was a winter, and he was taking tourist girls out to the next town, Truro, to look at his marijuana patch, and then he was cutting them up and burying them. So, and I didn't know it, and I just thought he was sort of a likable guy around town. We weren't best buds, but I did know him, and I liked him.
Serial Mom, I don't think was so much about focusing on a serial killer so much as the celebrity. and looking at how someone who's a serial killer, although she could have, done other things. He picked a serial killer because obviously the crimes were all brutal and violent and senseless, except in her twisted mind, and except for what I'd done. But focusing on that was really, it was the celebrity that evolved out of these killings, and it was really pointed at the media saying, look at what we do. We make celebrities out of murderers.
Only in America would that happen. Can you imagine that happening in a poor country? It has to be a rich country. Do you think that could happen in Albania? No. It's the excess of capitalism, which has always interested me. We have to put up with the limits of capitalism. This is one of them. Limits of free speech, limits of capitalism. And I'm for it to have the basic freedoms. It interests me. I'm not for it, but the excess and the outer limits of free speech and free society, when things are wrong, you should be against, is what interests me. How do we have to accept these to put up with the good stuff?
Well, oddly enough, it's like life imitates art. It really wasn't so much kind of that. I mean, Female Trouble really tells that story, and it has certainly come to be the truth. That now murderers are celebrities. How many jail hags do we have? We have women that appear to be quite normal and quite certainly educated, so on and so forth, that want to marry, the Zodiac killer or the any other number of people that are in there. Well, whatever floats your boat,
Did I see you in Hinckley? I was there. Thought so. My husband thought I was crazy. But
She is. The people that used to go to trials, when I would see them, I would go to across the country and go to the Hinckley trial. And then I'd go to Angela Davis. And there would be special people there that I would see that toured the country doing this, that were not journalists. And they were the top crime hags in the country, really. And we never showed our cards about what we thought about the case. That was sort of unprofessional as you waited in line. And I took my mom once to the Watergate trial. It was the hardest of all to get in was that, basically. Because each seat had earphones where you got to hear Nixon say asshole and stuff and say the tapes, which no one had heard the tapes yet. And my father was furious, saying, watching people's misery, going out of the way to watch other people's misery. And we went, and it was like a crime Woodstock. Patricia Hearst's trial was like, I didn't know her then. And she just rolls her eyes and says, I went to jail because of people like you. When her trial, you had to wait sometimes 2 days outside in sleeping bags. I remember her birthday, the fans bought her a cake. She didn't know any of this. She was so, going through a pretty bad time. And so she doesn't have a lot of humor about that, and I wouldn't probably bring it up. But certainly being in this movie made fun of that, because who wants to be a famous victim? And I think she got sick of it. She never signed an autograph till she made a movie with me, and she still refuses to sign any wanted posters or any of that stuff. And I don't blame her. Same way Tracy Lords doesn't sign porno. It's correct political sense. It's movie star correct, is that you don't sign things when you didn't want to be famous that got to be famous, basically.
And it turned out to be amazingly timely because as the O.J. Simpson, that had not even happened before we filmed Serial Mom. And so I don't know where you were when that happened, but I had turned on the TV and there's this low-speed car chase going on. And I picked up the phone right away. I called John, and he said, oh my God, can you believe it? We just filmed this a couple of months ago. How is it possible? Talk about life imitating art, and the film hadn't even been released yet. And there he is being followed by a line of police cars, and we'd done Kathleen's scene where she's being followed to church by all the police cars. And it really did turn out to be not so much of a joke.
I look at Serial Mom as one of my best movies, one of my broadest movies, the ones that most everyone likes, even the fans that only like Pink Flamingos and the ones that only like Hairspray. They all seem to like that one, too. I think a lot of it has to do with Kathleen Turner.
The great thing about John, and certainly the great thing about Serial Mom, is I think it was way before its time. his humor was, honestly, 10 years before its time. And if that movie was released now, if it was remade now, I think it'd be a huge hit. I mean, there's just the culture is caught up to John Waters. And I think that's a testament, really, to the kind of filmmaker he is.
Crime and Celebrity, I think, is going to continue to be and continue to roll on bigger and bigger and bigger.
I went before there was Court TV. Now everybody's into it. It peaked. There's no really good hardback books about true crime anymore. They're mostly all in cheap paperbacks now. It used to be a genre that it did peak because it got to be so many of them that every time there was one murder, somebody wrote a book about it. And there were trials where the defendant became a star, and they usually were defiant, theatrical, and didn't care what happened, partially insane. If you want to not be famous when you kill somebody, kill yourself. No one will remember the crime, even if you kill, well, even Columbine, what are their names? Most people can't remember. So basically, if they had had a trial, there would have been way more movies about them. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that the fascination with crime, infamy, and fame became the same in America. And that's what Serial Mom was about. And now it's not even, it's basics for comedy. It's just true.
How do you plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
In the beginning, shocking is what got you noticed. At this point with Serial Mom, I don't think we were worried about getting noticed. It was really just about doing a good comedy.
Making major motion picture was very cool. But we'd all grown up together learning how to do this. By the time we got to Serial Mom, which was a real movie with a huge star and a not totally subversive script like Pink Flamingos or Female Trouble. It was, you had all the tools you wanted, all the lights you wanted. And it was such a contrast from, 20 years before when we had 4 lights and a 16 millimeter noisy camera.
I don't think John had anything to prove. I mean, we did those kind of movies. We were really, growing ourselves and maturing, and we just wanted to be more legit and still have the crazy edge, but in a show that, could be on regular movies or on TV or, something more approaching to normalcy, but still have that little John insane touch of suburban satire.
You can't wear white shoes after Labor Day.
That's not true anymore.
Yes, it is. Didn't your mother ever tell you? Now you know.
No, please. Fashion has changed.
No, it hasn't.
The movie looks great. It was a different time. It's hard for me to remember when I made these things anymore. They're like, you joke, which one do you like better? They're all like your kids. I've said that a million times. This was a kid that had some money to go to a good school. We had the tools to make it. It wasn't a juvenile delinquent, but it was, it turned out to have graduated from college and kept its edge. Let's put it that way, if I have to put it in the context of all my children.